You're listening to the Back to Health Chiropractic Podcast, where we discuss tips and strategies for improving the health and wellness of you and your family. And now your host, Dr. Marc Dupuis, board-certified chiropractic sports physician.
Dr. Susan Wadia-Ells, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. Your new book, Busting Breast Cancer, 5 Simple Steps to Keep Breast Cancer Out of Your Body, is an absolute must read, not just for all women, but really all men, so that they can support and encourage the women in their lives to be as healthy as they can. I want to begin by asking, what inspired you to dedicate so much time to do the research and develop this book? Because I understand it was 10 plus years of work.
Right. Right. Well, I got mad. I have lost more than 5 friends to recurrent metastatic breast cancer. And of course, as you know, Mark, that means you are diagnosed with an early stage breast cancer, a primary tumor, and then you are, quote, successfully treated. And then too many women, it may be as many as 40% who are ever treated, find out within months, within years, or even sometimes within a decade or so, that they have now developed this recurrent metastatic breast cancer, which is a stage 4, which is a terminal diagnosis. And so and then of course they all died prematurely. And I just got mad. And I said, I don't want breast cancer. And what I'm seeing with this stupid pink ribbon, kerfluffle that happens every year, and the fact they want you to smash your breasts having a mammogram, it's barbaric and it makes no sense. And it's not prevention. All they're doing is saying, let's see if you have it yet. And if you do, we'll take your money and we'll stick your breast and we'll burn it. What Susan Love says, they need to find new treatments as opposed to slash, burn, and poison. Poison, burn, and slash. Or I don't know, and it's true. It's like those are barbaric. Those are all barbaric treatments. And so I just had the sense, I love to research. I'm a political economist by training with a PhD in women's studies, which is an interesting combination. And this book, as we'll talk about, really encompasses all of that knowledge, which has become fascinating for me.
Thank you for that. As we begin, I just want to mention some pretty scary statistics. So in the United States alone, it is estimated that there will be about 280,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer in just 2021, and an additional 50,000 cases of ductal carcinoma in situ. With so many new cases each and every year, the amount of fear that these statistics generate in women is staggering. That's why I feel your book is needed more now than ever before. It really should serve as a beacon of hope because you present research-supported ways for women to reduce their risk of breast cancer. But many of the things that they should do, or that you will encourage them to do, will make them challenge much of what they have been told by mainstream media and the modern medical industry, including many of their own doctors. Can you speak to this challenge for women?
Sure. And I address it directly in a few pages in chapter 2, that women, for very valid reasons, it turns out, are much more afraid to question authority than men. Women have a much higher degree of desire to obey, to not take risks. Women are much more risk adverse, as they say, than men. And you can just think about a bunch of 14 or 15-year-olds in front of a mud puddle, boys and girls. And if someone says, okay, let's see who can jump over the mud puddle, the boys are over it in a second. Some of them land in the middle. Some of them don't, will do it. Some of them will trip and fall on their noses. The girls are still standing there saying, oh, I've got the wrong shoes on. Oh my God, I'll probably not make it. Oh, there's no way I can do this. And it's like, what's the difference? And I don't think it's testosterone. And there were a number of psychologists, feminist psychologists, Nancy Gilligan, Jean Baker Miller, and others Nancy Chodorow, who said, and they wrote this in the 70s, and everybody can read that. Hold on a minute, I've got someone at the door. I'm doing a recording.
Oh, sorry, I have to return the watch.
Okay, and that's the mailman. He's returning some books. Anyway, so it turns out that it's how women are raised, the fact that we're raised by the mother, and in many ways we never separate from the mother. So we have a voice in our heads that tells women no, no, no. And the boys were separated early from their mothers because they were told at age 2, maybe, be a big boy, go take a shower, be a big boy like daddy. Mm. And so there was apparently, for many men who were raised by women, and that unfortunately is still the majority, and we should really be being raised by both parents, but that's not the way it works out, unfortunately, in many cases. So therefore, women have a voice in our heads of caution, of authority, that we have a hard time going against, whereas men have no idea what we're talking about. They don't tend to have that voice. And that makes it easy for the breast cancer industry to run this unnecessary breast cancer epidemic that we're facing now, to make it fear-based. Just like they've made COVID fear-based. You'll see many more men quickly ripping off their masks, and you always have, than women. Women are much more afraid of questioning authority, and it goes back to this voice in our heads. So having said that, the thesis of my book is the only way that we can end this unnecessary breast cancer epidemic is women, individual women saying, no, 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 I am going to follow knowledge, not authority. And it's only because women together form the only group that have the self-interest. And now, hopefully with my book, the knowledge to block 80% of all breast cancer that's happening right now. The industry has no interest in stopping treating women, diagnosing them, overdiagnosing them. They're making billions. People depend on women getting breast cancer to pay their mortgages, to put their kids through college, to have their Mercedes-Benz. So women, individual women, taking charge of their own life, we're the only ones that can end this disease right now, this epidemic right now.
Absolutely. I want to go next after, we'll call it the elephant in the room. So all too often, as you clearly discuss in your book, when women are diagnosed with cancer, rarely, if ever, do they get an actual scientifically supported reason why they developed cancer. This bad luck, as some women are told, is one of the drivers of the fear surrounding this epidemic, as women are left wondering, since no one knows what causes it, how do I know, will I be next? But what most people don't know, including many healthcare providers, is the absolute game-changing research of Thomas Seyfried and his metabolic theory of cancer, which for the first time in history describes the most likely cause of cancer, breast cancer and other cancers for that matter. Can you summarize what he found and the importance of this discovery?
Absolutely. I mean, I could not have done this book. I would not have done this book without Dr. Seyfried's published textbook, without his work describing the origin, the management, and the prevention of cancer. Up until I saw his work, which was the first time I heard about it in 2013, and his book came out in 2012. Up until that time, I had spent, 3 or 4 years doing nothing but looking at these epidemiological or statistical studies that talked about not the causes of breast cancer, the risk factors, because the Dana-Farbers, the Sloan Ketterings, the major mainstream and the minor mainstream cancer clinics today do not understand the origin, as you say, of that first cancer cell, be that breast cancer or any kind of cancer. And so, as you say, they'll say to women, well, Matilda, when they say, doctor, how did I get breast cancer? Well, Matilda, I guess it was just your turn. Or, well, Matilda, I guess you were the unlucky one. Or, well, Matilda, maybe you have it running in your family and you're not really aware. That's all they can tell them. Whereas with the metabolic theory of cancer, as Tom Seifert researched it, went back, found all of these amazing studies that described how cancer thrives on guzzling up all the glucose you eat every day. And now his real contribution, I think that's going to hopefully get him the Nobel Prize in the next few years, is he identified glutamine as a second major fuel for all types of cancer cells. And Dr. Seifert continues to maintain that if there's a way to block the glucose going into someone's body and a way to block the glutamine going into just the cancer cells, because glutamine is a very important amino acid necessary for a healthy person to stay healthy. So you don't want to knock out anybody's glutamine completely. You just want to block it from touching and feeding and fueling the cancer cells. And so that's the crux of the metabolic theory, that there are those two fuels that are fueling cancer cells. Another big crux of the metabolic theory is that all cancers, the initial cancer cells, are created when our lifestyles, our life happenings, viruses, etc., lots of different things come in and slam the power batteries, let's say in breast cells. And they suffocate those power batteries so that those mitochondria is the term. And that's becoming a common day, everyday word, thank heavens now. But so when the mitochondria, they need a lot of oxygen to pull that oxygen in, process it, and turn it into energy, ATP they call it. And that energy enables us to be talking, to be seeing, to be moving our hands, to be doing everything. Without ATP, you and I are nowhere. And without oxygen, you and I and our healthy cells are dead. We don't do anything because we die. But cancer cells, they were once, of course, healthy cells, and they got deprived of oxygen. And if everything's going well, they're going to die. Like everybody says, well, we're always making cancer cells. And I guess, as Dr. Seifert would say, that's right, but then they die. When those mitochondria start to suffocate, they don't stay around long. They call out to your immune system and say, hey, come on in and help us self-annihilate, right? Self-emulate. I guess it's annihilate. It's the apoptosis. Mm-hmm. I call it pop goes the weasel, right? But the biologist and the medical people say, oh, it's apoptosis. Okay, fine. But it's the sick cell, or in this case, the almost suffocated cell, saying, I'm not doing well. I better just cut my life and get out of here. And that's good. That keeps you cancer free. But when you have a lousy immune system, you have no vitamin D3, so you don't, and that's sort of like the juice, to connect your cells with your immune system. If your internal vitamin D3 Wi-Fi system is weak or down, and your cells in your breast, let's say, or your prostate start to suffocate, sometimes those guys, they won't die because they can't pull in the immune system or for other reasons. And what they do then is they have a prehistoric memory that it turns out that our mammal cells, that the mitochondria, the power batteries in our mammal cells, they evolved from prehistoric time when they were single cell bacteria, and all they knew how to do was multiply mindlessly by guzzling glucose, right? And so they're like that compost heap in the backyard. A tumor is nothing more than a compost heap. It's a it's a glucose guzzling it's not a bacteria, it happens to be your cell, but it used to be a bacteria that was just guzzling the glucose from the atmosphere because we didn't have a lot of oxygen prehistorically, and it made that stupid tumor. And that's what's going on with a cancer cell. So we have Thomas Seyfried and his work to thank for explaining how that happens. And of course, once you understand the absolute biological origin of a person's first cancer cell, you can say, hey, we can now talk about all the different ways you can protect your little your little breast cell or prostate cell or liver cell or brain cell from suffocating. And hence I could write this book, 5 Simple Steps to Keep Breast Cancer Out of Your Body. And I could show and cite, because I'm not a biologist, I've had one biology course, 1908, I think, in sophomore year of high school, There we are.
Well, thank you for that summary. That's a lot of information, but again, really simple to understand terms, and that's great because really people have to understand. If they can grasp this, it really changes everything, right? But here's the rub. So we've got groundbreaking scientific research that, if applied, could dramatically reduce new cancers from developing and possibly save tens of thousands of lives by helping cancer patients overcome their disease. But, of course, it's pitted against a billion-dollar cancer treatment industry that's predicated upon highly profitable exam procedures, surgeries, chemotherapy, drugs, radiation treatments. Can you share with some of our listeners the almost jubilant tone of some of these pharmaceutical companies in their annual reports as they almost seem happy to project the year-over-year record increases in sales as expected from their cancer drugs?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly use some of those quotes in various parts of my book. And, for women, I want to say, or for anyone who has mutual funds, take a look at where your money is invested. Take a look at what companies are part of the mutual fund, and then go look at their stock projections when it comes to cancer drugs and read it for yourself, because they are, of course, not thinking about the person who's developing cancer. They're thinking about attracting and pleasing the people who own the stock, who make a few bucks every time another woman is put on tamoxifen or any of the breast cancer chemotherapies, etc. Or General Electric that gets all excited when they have a new and more expensive mammogram machine. And suddenly you will realize that you are making your retirement income from pulling money away from people who are being slammed by cancer. And if that's you or your mother, your father, your sister, your husband, your wife, think about moving your money, because money is what makes people change. It's
a powerful vote. Mm.
Yeah, and it's and these headlines are just exciting growth anticipated for the next 10 years with breast cancer drugs. And what I found toward the end of this research is that today, I don't know how it was yesterday, but today, it looks like more than 50% of all breast cancer drugs, all income from breast cancer drugs, is coming from recurrent metastatic or just metastatic breast cancer drugs. So these are drugs that are not trying in any way to stop the disease. They are only, and they say that we have no idea how to stop metastatic breast cancer. It's a terminal situation, but we can, if you pay us $130,000 a year or $60,000 a month, these numbers are extraordinary. then we can keep you alive, or we'll try and keep you alive for 15 more months or 18 more months or maybe 36 more months. And yes, 3 years is better than no years. At what cost and at what quality of life? And only women who are going through that. And thank goodness I'm not, and have never even gone through a single procedure other than I had one mammogram, and that was it. That was the one and only mammogram of my life. I don't know the quality of life, and I don't think it's something I would choose. So yeah, it's a nasty situation, and the whole recurrent metastatic breast cancer epidemic is being kept very quiet. The women are suffering tremendously, and women are beginning to organize around that. And my book is probably the first to describe some of the absolute reasons for so much recurrent metastatic breast cancer day. That's chapter 1 in my dear book that you love so much, which Absolutely. I really appreciate, Mark. And also in chapter 9, I talk about how how every physician who wants to maintain her or his medical license, state medical license, must report every single recurrent metastatic breast cancer diagnosis to their state cancer board in absolute detail. Mets to the brain, Mets to the liver, Mets to the bone, age, duration before recurrence, et cetera, type of cancer. That has to all be reported, and I show chapter and verse, the citation in my book, that every physician has to fill out, and they have to send it to their state cancer board. The state cancer boards, they get 99 to 100% of their funding from the feds. They have to send that data in every year to their federal funder, and that could be the National Cancer Institute or the CDC. There's not one federal cancer agency that receives all 50 states' data. And this, I think, is very interesting. And then where do those federal or taxpayer-funded data, where is it sent to? To a private organization in Springfield, Illinois. And this private organization is the only group that has access to cancer data from all 50 states. And that private organization is the only group that decides what you and I will be told as cancer data for the USA. There's something very, very, very rotten in Denmark going on. And the funders of this private organization, and the organization itself is made up of a small group of very reputable, highly competent statisticians. And whenever I've contacted them, they've been always very forthcoming and given me whatever data they have, though I haven't yet talked to them about the recurrent metastatic data. I'm trying to figure out if I should go to the state boards first, if other people should do it. I haven't really, begun to do the frontline reporting on that, but I've got the big picture. And that's called the North American Association for Central Cancer Registries in Springfield, Illinois. And they're the ones, and they're funded a lot by the CDC, but also by the American Cancer Society, which is nothing but the radiology pharmaceutical industry. The American College of Surgeons, which is the doctor organization trying to protect the income of doctors, and other private medical associations. So it's really the industry that's controlling our national cancer statistics and withholding incredibly important recurrent metastatic breast cancer data.
Well, that's the frustrating thing, right? Like, it just seems like a no-brainer that the public should have this information. And again, you think about if you were to just poll random people on the street, almost everyone knows of fundraisers every month, almost every week, and we have a whole fundraising month. Most people probably think, hey, we're winning this battle, but if we really got those statistics out, maybe that would shed some light on all of this money that really is not being spent in any way, shape, or form for prevention, but people just assume that it is.
Right, exactly. Just like, everybody will say, I can be in front of a group of 500 women and I can say, I don't want anybody to think long, but when I say, I want you just in one word, just to shout out the very first thing you think about when someone says breast cancer prevention. And of course, they all shout out mammograms. And then I go, stop. How do mammograms prevent breast cancer? And the look that comes across the women's faces is sort of distaste, anger, frustration. And someone will always shout out, well, it prevents early death. I said that may or may not be. That wasn't my question. I asked you what hits you first when you think about breast cancer prevention. And then I say we have all been brainwashed. And even so, Obama, before I didn't like Obama, I did like Obama. And even he came out at some point and said it's very important to have, mammograms, pink ribbon, prevention. Everybody from the president on down has been brainwashed into believing that mammograms are prevention. And of course, that's a brainwashing, and that's not true. And you're so right. They really don't want to prevent. Well, because also they don't know how.
Right.
Until you accept the metabolic theory, no one really knows how to prevent. They can only talk about risk factors. Don't eat peanut butter because we did this study and it shows that women who hate peanut butter get a lot of breast cancer. That literally is the extent. But the other thing that I find is when we do have good research that's been published, and this I talked about a lot in chapter 4 in my book on contraceptive drugs. When we do have really good information about the biological causes of breast cancer, the research is ignored. It's ignored. It's even ignored by other researchers, and I somehow think they don't know about it. I don't know. But in my book, I try and quote chapter and verse, in this case, of that study that came out in 2010, published in Nature, like the preeminent scientific journal in the world, I think, and it's there clearly describing the steps that happen when that chemical progestin from a birth control drug goes into a woman every day, and how it doesn't only initiate breast cancer, but if you already have some breast cancer cells there, it's accelerating their growth.
And that's a great point. I love how we're kind of pivoting into this topic, how it's so important for women to know that the progestin containing birth control, that molecule is significantly different than the naturally occurring progesterone. And I think you really do a nice job of explaining that. And as you said, that study there showed the dangers of the progestin, but it doesn't seem like the medications, the birth control options have, the makers have really heeded that work back in 2010.
Right. Well, I don't think you can expect the makers of the birth control drugs to heed anything other than how do we, sell more drugs. But I do think that the scientists who made that discovery and put their names on that article, and one of those scientists is currently the CEO and president of Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And she, to my knowledge, has never come out with a public statement that says women should stop taking progestin birth control drugs, should not have progestin progestin-laced IUDs inserted, and women who are menopausal and on these combination progestin, estrogen, menopausal relief drugs, they should stop them because of our research that shows exactly how progestin is increasing your risk by at least 25%. And I just, one of the, when the study was first published, I give credit to Joseph Penninger, who's now in Vancouver. He's an Austrian. And he was the team leader of this international group that did this 10-year study. And the press release that I saw for one day and then it was gone in Science Science Daily is a wonderful thing to subscribe to online. I mean, everybody should subscribe to Science Daily. They'll publish everything. They don't hold back on anything. But then what happens is nobody else will publish a lot of it after that. But they did publish it. And I, again, have the press releases in my book verbatim. So people can see exactly what the authors of that progestin study said. And the headline is, birth control drugs birth control drugs cause breast cancer.
Amazing.
They haven't, but no one else has sort of repeated that since.
So sad. Let's spin over to a positive side of things. I want to touch on some of these simple steps that you describe in your book that women can take. Can you just briefly discuss why getting to a healthy body weight is so important for cancer prevention?
Well, as I understand it, every excess fat cell, the adipose tissue as they call it in our bodies, pumps out 24/7 a type of weak estrogen. And of course, as you've said, there's nothing wrong with natural estrogen and natural progesterone. Women need those two hormones in a balanced fashion. And balance is the word, a balanced fashion. We need to have as much estrogen happening and as much progesterone happening. But it's very difficult today for women to have this imbalance because of all the chemical-like estrogen chemicals that are out there in the food we eat, in the pesticides, in the flame retardants, in the cleaning fluids, etc. And so women can get out of whack. Anyway, so excess body fat, and when you're out of whack, that can suffocate the mitochondria. That too much estrogen, that's what it usually is, will attack and suffocate the mitochondria. So a woman who's got excess body fat, she's got a 30% higher risk of developing breast cancer, especially if she's postmenopausal, than a woman who is a healthy body weight, which is like a BMI of 19 to 24 or 25 or something. And the BMI, of course, takes into account the amount of excess fat you have on your body and sort of your bone size, your height, that kind of a thing. So that's really the main thing about excess body weight. And for younger women, the imbalance or having excess, producing more estrogen from excess body fat apparently doesn't necessarily raise your risk of developing breast cancer, but boy, once you have developed it, it usually means you've developed a fast-growing or a mature kind. So it may be increasing your development of breast cancer, but it's not showing itself until it's a mature, and that means it's a triple negative or it's a HER2. And once that happens, it's much more difficult for women who are overweight to have successful treatment. Their treatment just doesn't work very well. So their death rate is much higher. And it's astounding when you see support groups that are funded. Living Beyond Breast Cancer. They've thrown me out of one of their conferences already when, it was a Zoom and you're supposed to give your thoughts. Well, they didn't like my thoughts and they said, we're cutting you out of here. They knew who I was, but they cut me out. But they will not. I mean, majority of the women who are in these support groups for metastatic breast cancer are 50 pounds, 150 pounds, 250 pounds overweight. And no one is telling them you need to be losing weight, or I'm sure the majority of their physicians are not mentioning that. And that's very sad. So that is I think that's the major reason. There are a lot of other reasons that you'll see in chapter 2 about why it's important to, for breast cancer protection, prevention, why not to have excess body fat. But that's the major reason. Unbalanced much more estrogen than progesterone, and that suffocates those mitochondria.
Excellent. Now, how about probably the most simple thing that women can do, optimizing vitamin D levels, right? We can do that simply, but we need to know what levels are actually helpful in the prevention. And it's not necessarily what the reference ranges on a standard lab panel will say, right?
Right. And that's one way of evaluating how with it your doctor is. If your primary if your primary care practitioner or your OBGYN says, oh, Matilda, it's fine to have 30, 35, nanograms per milliliter is how they, measure it in the U.S. For your 25 hydroxy, your vitamin D3 blood level. Or if they say you don't need to have a vitamin D3 blood test, get another doctor. Just walk out. Just walk out. It's ridiculous. But if that doctor is following only the American Medical Association, only the National Cancer Institute, that's what they're going to tell you. Or they're going to say it doesn't make any difference. Don't believe that stuff. Walk out. Get another doctor. Because as you know, there are enough not just naturopathic doctors today, but there are enough medical doctors today who are understanding how important it is to question authority and to really look at the research and not to just think that the AMA is going to tell them the truth. So that's helpful. But again, if you're overweight, you have to really work hard to get. So the D3, the first question you asked was, what is the best level to have? And studies have found that there's never been a woman diagnosed with breast cancer who has a vitamin D3 blood level above 60. Isn't that
amazing?
Nice? I know. And they also find that women who are diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer have the lowest vitamin D3 of all breast cancer patients and of all cancer patients. And that's in the book as well. So again, that would make sense if triple negative is a mature type of breast cancer that's been gestating for a while in the body and not forming noticeable tumors. That it means that you've had no immune system. You've had a very, very low D3, and therefore it's enabled cells to be suffocating and more cells to be suffocating, and you becoming not estrogen positive. That's a young type of breast cancer, but triple negative or HER2, which is a much more mature type of breast cancer. That's something else that's not been discussed a lot, and I just think the industry either doesn't want to or doesn't know or doesn't understand. I don't know.
Now, let's dive back into, you mentioned mammograms. Now, this is a topic, again, that ruffles a lot of feathers. But again, if you were to ask any group of women if there are any downsides to getting this procedure, I would bet most of them would probably say no, there are no downsides. But really, like all medical treatments have pros and cons to consider. Can you share just a few things that women should know about mammograms, but most likely do not?
Well, the most important thing is they can really change your life for the worst. It turns out that 40%, and you gave this statistic at the beginning when you said 50 or 60,000 women a year are diagnosed with this ductal carcinoma in situ, that they now have elevated the name to stage 0 breast cancer. So Matilda, don't worry, you have stage 0 breast cancer, but actually, Matilda, that means you don't have breast cancer. But since we're calling it stage 0 breast cancer, we're going to treat you like you do have breast cancer. We're going to poke your breast with a fine needle and we're going to inflame it, and then we're going to maybe radiate you, or we're going to offer you amputation. Or you want double amputation? That's more money for us. We'll double amputate. Then you can relax, because we don't understand why you could develop breast cancer. I mean, all of these things, horrible, disgusting things, can happen to a woman because she agrees to have one stupid mammogram. and that they have now overdiagnosed her, calling her having breast cancer when she literally does not have breast cancer. She has inflamed breast tissue, probably because she's overweight, probably because she's eating the wrong foods, probably because she's very toxic, she's got high stress, she's eating pesticides. I mean, so many basic reasons for DCIS that she can reverse. So that, I think, and then they'll tell many women that they have this stage 1 breast cancer. Well, if you have stage 1 breast cancer, it means you have, a tumor that's like the size of a pea, that there's no way you're going to feel it. And the only way they can find it is by doing a mammogram. And the reality is most of those pea-sized tumors are what they call indolent. That means they don't do anything. They just sit there. Those cells are not moving. They're just stuck there. You leave that alone. You start poking anything. That's like sticking a needle in a beehive, because cancer cells are very loosely connected to one another. They're not like healthy cells in your liver or whatever. And so you want to just watch and wait. Do breast self-exams. Make sure if you have a partner that you guys have fun and do breast massage. I mean, enjoy life and watch and wait. And if you start to feel something, okay, fine, go have an ultrasound. You know where it is. And the ultrasound can say, oh, it's just a water-filled cyst, relax. Or it looks like it might be significant. Let's see if it grows anymore. It's not very large. Because a tumor that stays in your breast cannot kill you. Your breast is not your brain. Your breast is not your liver. Your breast is not your lung. Which is why doctors love, not female surgeons, I'm sure that's not true, but male surgeons, we'll double amputation, then we'll give you your desired cup size, and then we'll make a lot of money. The plastic surgeons even lobbied and got themselves a law that says that every insurance company has to pay for the reconstruction of any woman's breast tissue that she has had amputated for prevention or for treatment purposes. So they are reaping many, many more billions, again, based on women's fear and the knowledge that the cancer industry has no idea why one woman develops breast cancer and another doesn't.
Wow. So I would be remiss if I did not ask you a few questions about the industry itself and some of the major players that you mentioned earlier. Can you touch more on how some of these organizations run in terms of the American Cancer Society and things like the Susan B. Komen organization? Again, I would think that most people think that they're leading the charge in prevention, but as we've already discussed, doesn't seem like they're doing that either. Right.
And I talk a lot about both of these organizations, throughout this book. They're both completely cancer industry dominated, cancer industry dependent. You get rid of cancer as a massive growing epidemic, and those organizations would go away kicking and screaming. American Cancer Society, and there's a wonderful book by Deborah Davis, came out, 10, 12 years ago, called The War Against Cancer. It's a thick book. Let's see if I can find it quickly. I've got it, but I'm not going to find it quickly here. And she goes into chapter and verse of how the American Cancer Society refused to look at the studies about smoking and lung cancer. They did not want to do that because they were getting so much funding, apparently, from the tobacco industry. Crazy. So their goal was to protect the tobacco industry and the radiology industry. If you're not coughing, you're not going to go have a lung X-ray. So they're going to lose money. I mean, these companies are not interested in helping people. They're interested in making money for a small group of people. And so she basically goes through that. I think she may also go through the one about the pap smear, that they knew about the effectiveness of a woman having a pap smear to stop any kind of early cervical cancer. And they would not teach it in medical schools. They would not allow doctors to do pap smears. I mean, all sorts of things that I'm not remembering the specifics about. But if you look, it's Deborah Davis. She's a very reputable epidemiologist, I believe. She's done a few books, and this is The War Against Cancer.
I'll find it and put it in the show notes for everyone.
Yeah,
for sure.
really, she really goes through. And of course, Samuel Epstein, he died just a few years ago, and that's very sad for me. I really wanted to give him a copy of my book because he is the father of the no mammograms and protect women. He is the father of breast cancer prevention. And he was a professor emeritus when I first came across him at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And he has written, 15 books on the topic of the travesty, how the National Cancer Institute, every chair of the National Cancer Institute or director, who's appointed by the president, by the way, not by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, how that person is always coming from the cancer industry, and how there is a huge revolving door between heads of the cancer agencies and heads and super managers in the pharmaceutical industry. They're one and the same. And Tom Seifert, for example, before he came out with his book, and he's an eminent geneticist, been at Yale, at Boston College, I mean, the top league. And as he said, before, when I was trying to figure out, what, how to treat cancer, like metastatic stuff. He works with mice, right? And how do you deal with metastatic? How do you deal with this, etc. Before he understood that cancer was a metabolic disease, he would get hundreds of thousands of dollars to do his work, no problem. Once he discovered that cancer is not a genetic disease, it doesn't start in the genome, it doesn't start in the nucleus of a cell somehow. It starts, as we've said, suffocating the power batteries. Well, you can't get a nickel from the National Cancer Institute, the Centers for Disease Control, any government funding. You can't get a nickel if you do not adhere to the dogma, Allah, Illah, that cancer is a genetic disease. If you won't say that, you don't even get a call back. You don't get an email back.
Sickening.
They are controlling. The government is protecting, just like WHO is protecting information about the realities of how you prevent COVID and how you easily can treat it and stuff early, et cetera. How that's all being blacklisted and censored. They do this. They've done the same for years now with cancer. You can't talk about cancer as a metabolic disease. You get no money.
So sad. Well, as we're getting short on time, thank you so much for everything you've shared with us so far. I really want to encourage all of our readers to pick up your book because we really just scratched the surface and there's so many wonderful pearls in there. In addition to your book and the books that you have already mentioned that I'll find and put links to in the show notes, any other resources that you would recommend for our listeners?
Oh, definitely. Naisha Winters has a wonderful book. It's been out for a few years. She's the co-author of The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. And she did have stage 4 ovarian cancer when she was 19, and she's just turning 50 now. Wow. And about to set off on a 1,000-kilometer trek through Spain to celebrate her 30 years of being free from cancer. She's a naturopath, and she's training medical doctors and naturopaths in metabolic treatments. So so it's the metabolic approach to cancer, and it's drnasha.com.
Okay.
For people who are dealing with cancer right now, and trying to prevent recurrent metastatic cancers, then the book is Keto for Cancer by Miriam Kalamian. And Miriam worked with her own son and kept him going with a nasty brain tumor from age 4 until age 13, working with the ketogenic diet. And she became a certified nutritionist and is now working with individual patients around the globe. So that's another book, Keto for Cancer. And Chelsea Green Press in White River Junction, Vermont, Chelsea Green Press, they are publishing a number of ketogenic-based and metabolic-based books on cancer prevention, cancer treatment. They are now publishing Travis's 2 books, Curable and Tripping Over the Truth. And right now, as we said, Ketone, the Fourth Fuel, for those who are advanced enough to want to know the history and the reality of ketone bodies, then Travis has that. That's independently published right now on Amazon. And also my favorite cookbook of the ketogenic ones is, again, it's published by Chelsea Green. It's called The Ketogenic Kitchen by 2 Irish women, both who have dealt with cancer. And then there's Maria Emmerich. Her books are very popular. She's got, 8 or 9 of them. You want her cookbooks that are done just by her. She's co-written a couple of books. I don't get excited about those, but the ones that she herself has written, it's, keto for the family, keto restaurant recipes. I mean, she's so clear. If you're really a newbie to this deal, go with one of Maria Emmerich's solo cookbooks. She'll take you through the basics of the ketogenic lifestyle, and she'll give you some real down-to-earth practical recipes. And if you need to lose your body weight, which we've said is the number one thing, go keto, go with Maria, get her book, just start to have fun, relax. It'll take you 1.5 to 2 years. It's a lifestyle. It is not, and you're going to lose your hunger. The change, I don't know if you've switched over and followed ketogenic much at all. I mean, I do it periodically. I get frustrated. I love to eat. I love to cook, and I'm not hungry. And you're like, oh, so I shouldn't eat, right? That's right. Don't eat. You're not hungry. Don't eat. That's the healthiest thing you can do.
Well, thank you so much. That is a phenomenal list of references for our listeners to check out. Okay, as we get ready to wrap up, 2 final questions. Number 1, how can our listeners connect with you? And then any final words of wisdom?
Okay, 2 things. Yes, you can connect with me at Susan@bustingbreastcancer.com. You can go to my website, which we're going to be making much better in the very near future. That's the first goal here. But it's called bustingbreastcancer.com. People who want to buy 7 or more copies of this for their book group. And I'm holding up the launch edition, which is full color charts and graphs. It's the same price as Amazon. Okay. But I bet yours came from Amazon, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. You have black and white charts and graphs, which are good. I mean, they're clear. They're fine. I had color, okay? I published, 1,000 or so launch copies.
Oh, cool.
And so I'm sending them out, and I sign them. I, give my little John Hancock, and you get the full color. And as I say, if you want to order one, you can. It's the same price as the Amazon. But if you want to order 7 or more, then you get 15% off. You order 14 more or more, you get 20% off. And bookstores can order from Ingram Spark. It's all on the website and stuff. And then they get the 55% off for bookstores. That's their discount. So the bookstore can make some money. So they're very sweet. But to get in touch with me, it's bustingbreastcancer.com. or you can just email me directly at Susan, SUSAN, at bustingbreastcancer.com. And I'm ready to do traveling and conferences and book signings, the whole shebang.
Awesome. All right, Dr. Susan, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. This information really can be life-saving, and the future numbers of women that can prevent such occurrences of breast cancer, this could really be amazing if we really can get the word out to as many people as we can reach. So thank you so much for your work in putting this together.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
This concludes today's episode of the Back to Health Chiropractic Podcast, where we discuss tips, tools, and strategies to improve the health and wellness of you and your family. Please subscribe to this podcast so that you never miss a future episode. Also, please share this podcast with anyone you feel may benefit from what we covered today. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, have a great day.
You've been listening to the Back to Health Chiropractic Podcast. Join us again next time as we continue to share information on improving the health and wellness of you and your family.